All right, friends, once you've made your plarn, you got your long roll here attached to the ball you made earlier. The next step is to crochet this into a sleeping mat. So don't worry if you don't know how to crochet. Crochet is basically just a series of pulling loops through themselves to make a woven fabric. So I'll show you how to get started here. I'm not going to use a hook, I'm just going to use my hand. Actually, mainly my first 3 fingers, or 2 fingers and my thumb to kind of pinch the material here. So I'm going to start with that last handle that I ended up with on the plarn. I'm going to put my fingers through. You see how I'm going to twist around and pull that material back through itself. So I kind of have an adjustable loop here. Do that one more time. Put my fingers through, turn my hand, and as I reach through and pull this material up, I'm going to take that loop and pull it over. Kind of an adjustable loop here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my fingers through this loop, grab that material again, and the same process. I'll pull up a new loop. I want to keep these loops big enough to get my fingers through, and your gauge may be a little bit different because all of our hands are a different size, but for me, generally I'm going to count 12 stitches. Okay, so these first 2 loops that I pulled through aren't going to count, and you'll see why later. But now I'm going to count and pull through 12. So, using my left hand here to kind of push this off carefully so it doesn't pull too tight, I'm going to pull up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you'll see I'm kind of using my left hand to feed this material up. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. So I'm going to end up with a row that kind of looks like this. Kind of lumpy, bumpy, a little knotted. It's okay. It'll start to even out in a second here. At the end of each row, we're also going to do just one more pull through. And that's going to be, in crochet, this is called a turning chain. So I'm going to do that last one here. Now I'm going to try to lay this chain as flat as possible. And we'll see that we have a top loop and a bottom loop for each one of those that we pulled through. So not this very first top loop, but this second one. I'm actually going to take my fingers that have the loop, they're through the loop here. I'm going to reach in to that space. And from the back, I'm going to grab this material and pull up 1 loop. So I still have the one on my hand from before. I pulled up a new one. And then I'm going to grab this material from behind and pull it through both of these loops. So this completes what's called a single stitch in crochet. I'm going to move down to my next one here. I'm going to reach my fingers in to that pocket, grab this material from behind, and pull up 1 loop. I have the one I started with, the one I just pulled up. I'm going to grab that material from behind and pull it through both of these loops. So that makes 2. I reach my fingers in, pull up a loop, and behind, pull through. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3 stitches so far. And in this next space here, we're looking for these top bumps along the way. Your material might be a little bit different, and that's okay. Plarn is very uneven, so if it's hard to find these spaces in the first row, it's okay. The goal is to get 12 stitches. So however we can get that is fine. So we're going to reach in, up a loop. So 1, 2, push from behind and pull through. And then again, I'm going to reach in, pull up, and pull through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here goes number 6. Up a loop, pull through them, and then reach in for number 7. Up a loop, pull through. Number 8, reach in and pull up a loop. Through. Number 9. Number 10, we're going to reach in, pull up a loop, pull through. Number 11, reach in, pull up them. And number 12. So you'll see those first 2 loops I made actually have kind of tightened themselves into one loop. That's why those very first 2 pull-throughs didn't really count as a stitch yet. So I'm going to reach into this very last one, number 12. I'm going to pull up a loop, grab this material, and pull through. Okay, so it still looks kind of bumpy, wobbly here, but I've got my 12 stitches, so I need to make my turning stitch. I'm going to grab this yarn, or this plarn all by itself, and pull through a single one. Now we're going to flip this all over, because with crocheting you're always going to be moving from the right back to the left. Okay. So to start this next row, every row from here on out is going to be the same. See, we have these nice loops from those stitches we did before. We actually have 2 loops here. There's your first loop, and then you'll see there's actually underneath it a second loop. Because we're doing this with our fingers and not a crochet hook, we can actually get our fingers in through this tiny space here. And then grab this plarn from behind. And again, we're going to pull up a loop and then grab this material and pull through both of them. Okay. So for this second one, we've got our outer loop here, and then we've got this inner loop. And these can be hard to find, especially with plarn because it's so uneven. So an easy way to do this is I take my left hand, and as I slide back towards the stitch, you kind of find the space where your left thumb will go into the material. That's going to be the hole that you want. So I'm going to reach through that space, pull up a loop, grab it, and pull through 2. So this next one here, got my outer loop, and use my thumb. Let's see where I can get in there, pull up my loop, and pull through. So I've done 3 stitches so far. You're going to count your stitches. We're looking for these outer loops right here. So there's 1, 2, 3. It is very important that each row you are counting to make sure you have the same number of stitches. That is the number 1 mistake people make, is getting too few or too many, and then everything kind of goes like this. So take my fingers, I'm going to reach into that space that my left thumb found, grab that material from behind, pull up a loop, and then pull through. So again, here's number 5. Let's see where my thumb goes in. Make sure I pull up a loop and pull through. Okay. Number 6. There's no space. Up a loop and pull through. So the main thing here is we want to keep our loops as consistent in size as possible. That's going to really make a more even fabric and avoid hard knots or really big gaps in the material. Think about sleeping on one of these mattresses. You're going to want to get it as smooth as possible to make it really comfortable. So there we go. And reach in, pull up a loop, pull from behind, and there's that one. And so our next one's, the thumb goes right in there. And pull up a loop, From behind, I'm gonna pull through both of those. Each one pull up a loop. For these guys. This one here, sometimes it starts to get kind of tight. Just have to work it around as best you can. And then this very last one here. Sometimes this little guy on the end from the first row, I like to just tuck it under and go through that as well. Just so it doesn't hang out on the end there. Okay, so this is number 12. And then I still got to make my turning chain, so I'm just going to reach and pull through one all by itself. And I'm going to flip it over. Now you'll see that this is kind of curved, wonky a little bit. That's okay. Even after doing several hundred of these, it still is like that for me too. So you can take it and stretch it, make it a little more straight if that's helpful. But you'll see, again, we've got the same loops on the top. And then we've got these same spaces I'm going to try to go through. So you've got your top loop, you got this second loop. First one's a little bit harder to get. I'm going to reach my fingers through both of those. I'm going to pull up a loop from behind, grab the material, and pull through. So the second one. So I'm using my thumb to grab that hole there, this tiny little space. Get the top bar, get that second one that follows that same arc. Reach your fingers in, grab that, pull up a loop, and then pull through both of those loops. Okay. So you'll start to see after a few rows here, as the material starts to form, by going through these spaces that we do, it's allowing us to crochet a little more loosely, which is going to make this process easier on your hands, I promise. But it's going to result in a more solid fabric. So I'm pulling up a loop. Again, I'm using my left hand here. Reach through that. Some of these spaces get a little tight, so you may only be able to get one finger through to kind of dig that out. It's okay. Just make sure you're pulling up a loop that's about the same size. There's top loop, go in there. Okay. So this process will continue until your mat is around 7 feet long. So we're just going to be doing these rows back and forth, taking your fingers and reaching into this material, pulling up a loop, from behind, back through. Okay. It's really important that each row you make sure you have the same number of stitches. So when you get to the end and you do your last turning chain, it's a really good time to go back and count to make sure we have the right number of stitches here. A good way to count is these outer loops. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay. Stitch count is not as important as making sure that you have the same number. So whatever you start with, keep that number in your mind and you're going to use that forever. But you'll see this mat is starting to form up pretty quickly here. We've only done 3 rows. Now you see the material is pretty dense, not allowing a lot of light through. And you can see from the thickness, it is going to provide quite a bit of cushion here for our friends still, even though it is the lighter plarn version. Okay. So that'll be it for this video. And the next one, I will show you how to finish up with the pillow pocket and a carrying strap.